Good evening, everybody. Too late in the day to have responses, right? We are so pleased to have so many here tonight. We thank you for coming out. I am Sandy Dragu, CEO at CATA, and again, we welcome you. That is going to be the length of my talk tonight. As you can tell, I don't have much of a voice, and if I get coughing, that doesn't work. That's even worse. So I am going to turn the microphone over to Kelly Rossman, and Kelly is going to begin our evening. So Kelly, it is all yours.
You look like an excited crowd. Thank you for being here tonight. Lots of listening. This is a listening session. We've got three engineering experts here who will review several ideas that CATA has come back to you with based on a number of the comments they've heard in a number of sessions. A couple of things before we get started, and then really it is all engineers tonight. First, I want to make sure that you have a copy or two of this. This is a handout sheet with any comments. By all means, make sure you've got one or more copies. So if you have any questions and we don't have a chance to get those answered, we'll take them back and make sure that they're on the answered and on the website. Number two, there are two more sessions just like tonight. Tomorrow night at the Allen Neighborhood Center and Wednesday night at the Okemos Masonic Center in Meridian Township. That information is also on that back table. 7 basics about bus rapid transit if you haven't seen it. And then actually I really encourage you to grab a copy of this if you have not seen it. It's detailed responses to all of the questions that we received in the sessions we conducted in August. So with that, just a couple of ground rules. First, as you know, CATA has been working long and hard on this project, but they're not near to completion. That's where you come in. This is part of the public comment and input section. I really want to make sure that you have an opportunity to view and spend some time listening to the engineers who are going to talk about the variety of ideas and the issues that were raised that these ideas look to address. A couple of things before I introduce the experts. Number one, several ideas for the BRT will be presented. We ask that you hold all of your comments to the very end to help ensure that we can get through all of those ideas. Number two, comment cards have been placed. They were supposed to be placed on your chair. Did everybody sit on your comment card? No. They weren't placed on the chairs. Josh, for crying out loud, man. Josh has had a bad day because he got broken into last week and he's still dealing with that. You can only use that for about another week, Josh, and then you're, got to get back into it. All right, now be respectful of everyone's time. You may have a lot of questions. We've got a little bit of time after the engineers speak to answer questions, but we do have to be out of here by about 6:30. So they'll go quickly through not only the options or the ideas, but why those ideas came about.
The mic isn't working.
Pardon me?
The
microphone is not working. Okay, Lisa will get it. In the meantime, I'll just keep talking because you will catch up.
I think you just need to be closer.
You think I just need to be closer?
The volume is gone.
Relax. All right, so here's the deal. Listen, be nice to everybody. These are engineers, not communicators. And when I say that with all appreciation and all affection. They know engineering backward and forward. If you're not certain of something, make sure to make a note of it so that you can ask it after they are done with their presentation. If we cannot get to your question, make sure you have one of those sign-up cards. Fill that card out. There's a box on the front table. We will make sure every question gets answered. Watch for the website, and if there was not a sign-up sheet, when you came in, make sure to sign it on your way out so that we have everyone's name and email address so that we can keep you posted on further activities. And with that, I'm going to introduce to you the three amigos, the engineers, the transportation engineers, first with AE Comp are Sean Kelch, transit engineer, and Mike DeBreeze, also transit engineer. They'll be doing the presentation, and on their far left, my far right, is Bill Ballard. He's an environmental planner with Mead and Hunt. So if there are environmental questions, he'll be here to respond to those. And I'm assuming we have the mic ready to roll? Because they're engineers, they don't talk. Yeah, we have the mic ready to roll. It's not even here. They're engineers, so they don't necessarily speak as loudly as I do. Okay, someone took the mic.
We're trying to find batteries.
Trying to find batteries. All right, I say we, okay, so I'm with you, buddy. All right, thank you very much for your patience.
Okay, how's this? Is this loud enough?
Yeah.
So engineers can talk loud.
Yay.
Okay. It's quite an introduction. Well, thank you. Well, before we get into the ideas that have come about since the previous meetings with some of the concerns that have been expressed, we want to make sure everybody has the same baseline and understands what the current BRT project is. So that's where we'll start. So if we start on the westerly end of the project in the city of Lansing, and up on the map here, we start at the Michigan Grand Avenue intersection. The BRT will basically commence from that point and head southerly on Grand Avenue, and then it will turn right, which is west, onto Lenawee. And then from Lenawee, we will hit Capitol. Once we reach Capitol, we will head north on Capitol up to Ionia. And then at Ionia, we will turn right and head east back to Grand. And then when we get to Grand, we will head south back to Michigan. And that is what's referred to as the Capitol Loop. And one thing to note about that Capitol Loop is the buses will actually go contraflow on Grand and on Capitol. So one of the lanes that's used for autos today will be used for a dedicated bus lane in the opposite direction of the vehicles on Grand and Capitol. From that point on, as we head east on Michigan Avenue, we will continue through Lansing and head easterly. Whoops. Excuse me. Again on the screen. So we're on Michigan Avenue, heading east. And as we head east, we will approach East Lansing. There's stations along the way, of course, spaced at about a quarter mile, roughly. And as we head east on Michigan towards East Lansing and MSU campus, we will hit Grand River. At Grand River, we will turn right and continue to head easterly on Grand River through East Lansing and through MSU campus. Again, there are station stops approximately every quarter mile along the way. And then as we continue to head east on Grand River, we'll enter Meridian Township, and we'll continue to head easterly until we hit Marsh Road. And at Marsh Road, that is the point where the end of the line will be, and we'll enter Meyer, and there is a station proposed in the Meyer parking lot that would be built, and that would be the end of the line. Now, obviously, you can head back west on the same BRT bus heading westerly, and it follows the same route, just opposite side of the road, of course. At the Meyer, one thing to note at the Meyer parking lot, there is a 60-car park and ride lot proposed where you could park your car and get on the BRT. A couple highlights. That route is 8.5 miles long. There are 27 station locations proposed. Now, when we say 27 stations, that doesn't necessarily just mean one station and that's it. A location actually can be on both sides of the road. So when we count a location, say at Hagedorn, for example, there's actually two structures there, one for the eastbound side and one for the westbound side. So that is a station location. So that counts as one. A couple other highlights. This plan requires 15 buses to be utilized. The service frequency is proposed to be 6 minutes at the peak time. The current BRT would eliminate the need for Route 1, Route 4, and a portion of Route 48. So those routes would be eliminated, as in 1 and 4, and it would be modified for 48. The construction cost estimate for this project is $132 to $133 million. The annual operations and maintenance costs, the O&M costs, for this BRT option are proposed at $7.1 million. The current Route 1, Route 4, and Route 48 that overlaps with the proposed BRT route are $4.4 million. So it results in a net increase of $2.7 million for the BRT. Ridership numbers are shown, 10,800 for 2015, 12,700 for 2035. One of the significant environmental factors that has been discussed at some of the public meetings and is being reviewed by CATA during the EA process is the medians. There are some medians that are being proposed along the corridor. Part of the corridor already has medians in it, in East Lansing specifically, and along the MSU campus, but there are some additional medians being proposed. And the environmental concern on that is it does require folks to travel further to get to a destination. Instead of being able to turn left directly into a business or a side street, you actually have to go to a signalized intersection and do a turnaround or a U-turn at that place if you wanted to turn left into that business. So you basically would proceed, for example, oops, let me go back here. So if you wanted to enter a side street, you would head, and you're heading westerly, and you wanted to turn into one of the businesses on the southerly side of the road, you would need to go past the business to the next signalized intersection, say at Northwind here, and then you would do a U-turn and turn around and then go back and make a right turn into that business. So similar to what we call Michigan left, it's a common term that people use to describe it. So similar to that concept. Improvements-wise, there's several improvements that come with this BRT alternative. First of all, safety is improved. There's several different areas that happens. First of all, there are new signalized pedestrian crossings that don't exist today, so it provides better access for pedestrians to cross the street along the corridor. The medians that are proposed, one good thing about the medians is they do reduce accidents. It's been shown in several studies by FHWA that the addition of medians to disallow left turns actually improves safety, and that is because there's less conflict points without the left turns happening. In addition, ADA compliance will be provided at all intersections. Further, ADA enhancements will be provided at all station intersections, and this includes signal upgrades, audible signals, countdown timers, that sort of thing that do not exist along the corridor today.
Do you use whole words rather than initialisms?
Sure. ADA is Americans with Disabilities Act. So basically there's certain requirements they need to meet to accommodate people with special needs as far as slopes on sidewalks and detectable warning strips and things of that nature. The current BRT option does improve transit capacity. That is one of the objectives of this alternative. It also improves travel times for both auto and transit vehicles. The reason it does this is because the corridor has dedicated bus lanes. So rather than the buses being in the same lanes as the cars and vehicles and stopping in traffic and causing cars to stop behind them and potentially cars to weave in and out to get around them, the buses actually have their own dedicated lane. So that helps improve the travel times. Again, as I mentioned, improves traffic flow for all vehicles. And finally, it does allow for potentially improved EMS response times. One of the things with EMS being emergency services. So the way it does that is because the dedicated lanes are for buses only. Well, they are also for the emergency vehicles, the first responders. They are allowed to use the bus lanes. So they would have their own lane to be able to access whatever destination they need to. So as was previously mentioned, we did have a couple public meetings in August, and there's been other meetings along the way, and we've heard some public concerns with this alternative. First of all, one thing we've heard is that it does reduce the number of bus stops. So that is the case. There are less stations than there are bus stops today for Route 1. It does prevent direct left turns in Meridian Township. That was a concern that we've heard. Another one is this something immediate, or we're going to try to hold the question till the end?
The question regarding the reduced number, by how many stations do we reduce the number? From 30 to 27 or from 40 to 27?
the bus stop, 17.
Yeah, I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but it can be provided, yes, we have that information, so I can't tell you off the top of my head, though.
17.
Another public concern that we heard about this BRT alternative is it does eliminate the stop at Frandor. A concern we also heard was how our emergency vehicle is going to access side streets and businesses. We also heard a concern access to center station for visually impaired could be a challenge. And then finally, we also heard location of proposed Meyer and Meridian Mall stations being further away than the buses currently drop folks off at those places, so that was another concern we heard from the public. There are many other concerns we heard as well, but those were ones that seem to be repeated that we heard over and over again, so we just wanted to hit those highlights. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Mike.
All right, I'm kind of tall, so I'm going to just kind of grab the mic here. So based on those meetings in August, we've got 5 different ideas that we want to share with you tonight, and Sean and I will tag team them. I'll take the first one here. The first one is kind of in response to the comments about the median running bus lanes in Meridian Township. The fact that those kind of block the left turns and the access. So this first idea is to to eliminate the median running BRT lanes and put them on the outside with side running dedicated BRT lanes. And that would occur in Meridian Township. So this is a map of idea number 1, where the BRT, as Sean described it, continues all the way to Hagedorn. And then when you get into Meridian Township, instead of having median running BRT lanes, the BRT lanes would be on the outside, adjacent to the curb. And so that would allow the project to have a 2-way center turn lane down the middle. And so when you have that, you can certainly access left turns into and out of all the driveways and businesses in Meridian Township. So mobility is increased with this option in terms of access to side streets and access to the businesses. That does come at a cost, though. The median is not as wide as a 2-way center turn lane, so the project actually is wider as a result. And so the cost goes up in order to widen the project by a few feet on each side of the road. And with that, there comes an option with the fact that there's right-of-way constraints along the corridor too. So there'll be some parcels of land that aren't currently impacted that might have to be impacted in order to fit that in. So the cost goes up to $140 to $145 million. That's about 8 to 13 million more than the concept that Sean just described. And property acquisition, depending on which parcels are impacted and the expense of those, which has not been fully vetted yet, could make those impacts go up even higher. In terms of operating and maintenance costs, 2.77 million net increase, so that's marginally greater than the option that was just described by Sean as it currently sits. BRT ridership doesn't change. It's just that there's side running lanes for the BRT vehicles instead of median running. And so there are some environmental impacts as well. As I've described, the potential purchase of property in order to make it fit. There's also driveway impacts. Now with having side running lanes for the BRT, we'll be having outside placed stations. They'll be on the outside instead of the median. And of course, as we all know, there's lots of driveways in Meridian Township. And it's possible, based on where the BRT stations are located, that some of those driveways may be impacted. We might need to consolidate some driveways. It's possible that some driveways might even need to be eliminated. All of that hasn't completely all been fully vetted yet. Now also, there's a safety impact. As Sean alluded to, with the median running BRT, there's quite a fewer conflict points with vehicles and the bus, with the bus running in the median. With the bus running along the outside, as idea number 1 describes, everybody that turns into or out of a driveway in Meridian Township is going to have to cross paths with the bus lane. So there's a possibility of collisions there. And so there's increased conflict points, and so there's a potential for safety-related considerations that have to come into play. And as motorists driving on Grand River, if they want to make a right turn into one of the businesses or driveways, they would slow down. They would get into the bus-only lane in order to complete their right turn. So there's a possibility that could also impact the bus reliability in terms of congestion impacts there with the bus. So this option has certainly has some opportunities. There's no change in ridership compared to the BRT with median running in Meridian Township. It does allow left turns to be provided with a two-way center turn lane. You still have Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA improvements at a majority of signals. However, there's a few signalized locations, for instance at Brookfield, Campus Hill, and Montrose in Meridian Township, where a signal is required in order to get pedestrians into the median for a median station. You wouldn't need those signals at those locations, for instance, when the bus is on the outside. So there's a few locations where some of these enhanced Americans with Disabilities Act improvements would not be implemented with this idea. So some of the challenges I've already mentioned. Of course, the project has an increase in cost, both on a capital side and the operations and maintenance side. Requires a purchase of additional property in order to make it fit because the project is a little bit wider. The safety implications that I've alluded to already. Some of the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act improvements. There's 6 locations where you wouldn't have those enhanced features as you would with the original idea. So there's no new signalized pedestrian crossings east of Hagedorn, again, because there's some locations where you don't need a signal anymore, as opposed to you did need one earlier with the BRT in the center. And some of the station placement is going to be a little challenging, considering the number of driveways on the outside. So I'm going to turn it to Sean here for idea 2.
Idea number 2 has some similarities to idea number 1. It does continue the current BRT as currently planned to Hagedorn. And once you get to Hagedorn, rather than going to side running dedicated lanes, we would actually go to mixed traffic lanes. So rather than the buses having their own dedicated lane on the outside, it would operate similar to the way it does today, where the buses would be in the lanes with the vehicles. So we call that mixed traffic. And that would just run from Hagedorn all the way to the end down to Marsh Road. With this option, again, you keep 8.5 miles. One of the big changes, though, is the number of BRT vehicles. The number of BRT vehicles has to go up from 15 to 16 in operation, and that's because the route is less efficient. When you're in with mixed traffic with the cars and you don't have a dedicated lane, the bus won't have those efficiencies it has from having its own lane. They'll have to work with cars and other vehicles, with stopping and turns and that sort of thing. So the efficiency of the bus goes down, which requires more buses to keep the frequency that we want to meet. The construction cost does go down. It goes to $125 to $130 million, which makes sense because we're not widening the road east of Hagedorn to accommodate a dedicated bus lane. We would just be using the existing lanes as they exist today. This has the highest operations and maintenance cost at $3.05 million net annual increase as compared to today. And that's because, again, it's less efficient. It requires more buses to get the frequency that we want. So it requires additional costs in O&M. Projected ridership does go down. It's reduced with this option. The theory here is it's less attractive because the route takes longer to travel. And then the environmental factors associated with this are the increases delay for all vehicles. Since the buses are in the traffic lanes, you don't have the advantage of having a bus in its own dedicated lane. So again, that increases delay for all vehicles. There is the potential for diversion impacts. If it gets to the point where the buses are slowing the cars down and the road becomes overly congested, folks may choose to find a different path. They may divert off of Grand River or Michigan Ave. And then again, the auto travel impacts. The buses continue to stop in the auto lane. So you do get into the situation where when the buses stop, people like to weave out and go around them. So there are some issues that can occur with that as well. Opportunities, again, I already mentioned that there's a capital cost reduction. So this is a less expensive idea. Left turns are allowed east of Hagedorn. So there would not be any of the U-turns required for this alternative, or I mean this idea, excuse me. The ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act upgrades would be similar to idea number 1 in having 21 station signals. The challenges are the increase in traffic delay with bus and auto lanes, as I previously mentioned. With the buses at an increased frequency riding with the cars, there is more likelihood that there will be delay for all vehicles. There is no safety improvement east of Hagedorn from a signalized pedestrian standpoint. As Mike mentioned, there's several signals that will not be required. as a result of the stations being on the outside instead of in the median. This does have the highest annual operations and maintenance cost. It does eliminate the enhanced ADA improvements at 6 locations, similar to idea number 1. The station placement is still difficult in some areas with this idea, and that's again because of driveways. The tightly spaced driveways in Meridian Township that happen, finding a good spot to fit a station in between them will be a challenge with this idea, and it may result in the consolidation or the moving some driveways to make the station fit. And then finally, there is no improved EMS response time in Meridian Township with this idea. Since the buses will be in the vehicle lanes, there will not be a dedicated lane that the bus is using that would be shared with the EMS vehicles.
All right, idea number 3. In fact, ideas number 3, 4, and 5 are all very similar. We call these sort of the capital to campus ideas. And so we got a few of these to go through. So the first idea here is to basically shorten the route. Have the route continue east along Michigan Avenue, and it gets to what we're calling the Delta Triangle in the vicinity of Grand River, Michigan, and Delta. Have the BRT system stop there and have a transfer station with Route 1. So this is sort of a concept here. Let me get your bearings straight. So this is Michigan Avenue heading west towards the Capitol. It's Grand River heading west towards the Capitol. This is what we're calling the Delta Triangle right here. And so this is a visualization of what this idea might look like. So as BRT vehicles come from downtown heading east, they would make a left turn on Delta in mixed traffic, make a right turn on Grand River in mixed traffic, and then they would turn into this parcel of land where a BRT station would be constructed. They would drop off their passengers, pick up their passengers, make a right turn back onto Grand River, onto Michigan, and head back to the Capitol. And so in order to continue the line, Route 1 would not be changed at all along Grand River Avenue. And so Route 1 vehicles, they would come, make their turn onto Michigan Avenue, turn in, drop pedestrians off here, bus riders, and then they would get back on Grand River and head back east towards the mall. And so this is an idea that we're calling capital to campus. This parcel of land that I just showed is very small, and so having a transfer station here would be very, very difficult. It's very tight for having transfers being occurring there. So there's another sort of sub-concept here with this idea, and that would be to actually purchase just a little bit more property sort of in this pink area. And so then the concept would change just a little bit in as much as eastbound vehicles would turn directly into the site. The BRT vehicles would drop off and pick up pedestrians and bus riders there, go around the site, and then head back west towards the Capitol. And Route 1 vehicles would come in, drop off their passengers, pick up passengers, and then head out Grand River back east towards the mall. So this idea uses just a little bit more land than the first graphic that I showed you. The concept, though, is the same. So with this idea, the BRT service frequencies stay the same as in the current plan. Route 1 would be reinstated. It does require a transfer, which is one of the challenges associated with this particular option. Since the route is shorter, only 4.8 miles, the capital cost goes down to a little over 110 million area to construct. Property acquisition is going to be an issue. Of course, that's private property where those BRT stations are proposed. So that's certainly an issue that would have to be examined. The O&M costs would be about 2.6 million, so a net annual increase. And the ridership is also reduced. The ridership of the BRT doesn't extend nearly as far east as ideas 1 and 2 do, and so the ridership is going down. And again, environmentally, that's a big impact to try to consider purchasing that property in order to construct the station there. So in terms of opportunities, it's about 23 to 28 million less in the capital cost, so it costs less, but that's, again, the route is shorter. Addresses many of the public concerns that we heard at the meeting in August. We still are providing BRT from capital to campus, providing Route 1, which some folks had wanted reinstated, sort of east of this, what we're calling the Delta Triangle area. There's no impacts at all along the median of Grand River Avenue, so right in the campus area. There's no impacts at all to the median with this idea, and of course, since we don't have any BRT system in the Meridian Township, there's no impact to the access, left turns in, left turns out, that sort of thing in Meridian Township. So from a challenging standpoint, again, transfers are required. That's not nearly as efficient as being able to stay on the BRT route all the way to Meyer and Meridian Mall. Significantly, property acquisition is an issue there. BRT doesn't really extend into the campus area, nor east of there. Again, there's there's signal improvements that would be made with the original concept that we don't need to make here. So in terms of improved pedestrian access across Grand River, further to the east, that doesn't come into play at all with this option. Reduced connectivity to MSU. And then there's also the issue of, this Delta Triangle area is a pretty busy location. Michigan Gravener is a busy intersection, so we'd be adding traffic potentially to an already busy intersection. So that's also sort of a challenge. And then again, because you're not having dedicated BRT lanes all the way to the mall, the opportunity for emergency service responders to use that dedicated lane in cases of getting people to Sparrow Hospital, for instance, goes down.
As Mike said, these next few ideas are all capital to campus ideas. So this idea is to run the BRT as currently planned to Abbott Road, and then from Abbott Road go into mixed running to the Broad, which is located right here in this overall map. The Broad currently has a pullout, which I will show you a graphic that shows it, and we would take advantage of that pullout and put a station, a BRT station, at the Broad Museum. Again, to get your bearings here. Sorry about that. The Broad is up in this area that I'm highlighting in red, so that's the museum there. And again, this is an existing pullout area, so we would be looking to add a station at this pullout area where the BRT would terminate. When they when they turn around, we have a signal here that would allow the buses to proceed back westerly, turn left basically, and head back towards downtown. Now with this idea, as Mike mentioned on the previous one, there would be a transfer required. So when if you wanted to go further east into Meridian, and it would be a reinstated Route 1. With this option, we are going a little further than idea number 3, 5.6 miles. The number of stations is 18, and this requires less bus vehicles since it's a shorter route, 13. Service frequencies are the same as the current plan. Again, Route 1 would need to be included along the non-BRT segment. So a transfer would be required, as I mentioned. The construction cost does go down with this option. It goes down to $100 to $105 million. The annual operations and maintenance cost is $2.3 to $2.6 million. Again, the projected ridership is similar to idea number 3. And one of the environmental challenges with this is placing the station on private property, MSU's property. So there would be coordination that would need to occur with the university. The opportunities, as I mentioned, it's a $28 to $33 million cost reduction as compared to the current BRT. One of the nice things about this idea is there's less BRT construction, so an earlier opening day would be possible if this were to move forward. It does have a lower annual operations and maintenance costs as compared to the current BRT alternative. The existing medians, as Mike mentioned before, are not impacted in East Lansing and MSU on Grand River. And again, the ADA upgrades are just 17 station signals as compared to 27 in the current BRT, and of course that's because the route is shorter. Again, one of the biggest challenges is the transfer. If you want to go from the west end from downtown Lansing to Meridian Township, Marsh Road, you do have to transfer. You would hit the road if you're heading easterly, and you'd have to get off the bus and then get on a Route 1 bus to keep heading east. To determine the location for transfers is a challenge. Let me just go back to the previous slide. And again, as you can see at the Broad, there's not a lot of extra space. So where would the transfer occur? There's not enough space to have a Route 1 bus coming here too. There's only enough space for the BRT. So that's something that would need to be determined, is where the transfers would happen for this. Again, potential impacts to a historic district on MSU campus. That would be an environmental concern, challenge that we'd have to work through. A layover point for the BRT buses. At the end of the line, the buses will lay over and sit for a few minutes, and the drivers can get out, stretch their legs, that sort of thing. At this road station, there's not room for the bus to just stay there and let the driver take his few minutes to stretch his legs and get ready to get back to driving. It does eliminate enhanced CDA improvements at 10 locations because the line is shorter. And again, it does not provide that dedicated lane for EMS responses.
All right, and then the last idea related to capital to campus is just a little bit different. This idea terminates the BRT route in East Lansing. It follows the BRT as it's originally concepted until you get east of Abbott, where the route would go up north on Charles, east on Albert, and then south on Division, back to Grand River, and then follow west along the route back to the Capitol. And so that would be the location where the final BRT station would be located. And again, just like with the other capital to campus ideas, once you get east of there, Route 1 would be reinstated just as it is today with all the blue dots showing the Route 1 locations there. This is a sort of a visualization of where this last BRT stop would be located. So this is in the block, as I'd mentioned, bounded by Charles, Albert, and Division, the very colorful parking deck that's located there. This is an area that currently has, I believe, on-street parking, parallel parking right here, which was originally developed by CATA as a station long ago for previous operations of different routes. And so CATA can just simply reconstitute this area, construct a station in this spot, and there's a significant amount of width here, probably 200, 250 feet or so, where you could use it as a transfer station. There's enough room there to have a BRT bus stop and do its pickups and drop-offs in Route 1 to be able to do its activity. So that's one of the benefits there. Just as an overall with this one, again, the project length is shorter. It does require a transfer again between the BRT and Route 1, as all of the capital to campus ideas do. It has a similar cost to the previous idea 4, the same type of operating and maintenance management costs too. And the ridership is reduced. Again, we don't go all the way to the Meridian Mall, so the ridership goes down. Now, in order to construct this station here, there are some traffic impacts that we'd have to work with the City of East Lansing with. So these buses are pretty large vehicles, and these streets are not all that wide. So for a bus to make the right turn from northbound Charles to eastbound Albert, and for the bus to make a turn from eastbound Albert to southbound Division, we would basically have to take the existing right turn only lane, which is sort of in this vicinity, curb it out so that there's only one lane on the approach, get that bus in sort of to the middle of the road in order to improve its turning radius so that bus can make that turn. So that would be an impact we'd have to work with the City of East Lansing on to sort of fine-tune the details of that operation there. So it does have a cost decrease. The route isn't nearly as long, and so you could get the project into construction and opening up earlier. So with the same types of opportunities in terms of lower O&M costs, no impacts to the median along Grand River Avenue. One of the nice things, again, I'm going to go back to my little slide here. One of the nice things is that the signal down here at Division and Grand River is set up perfectly already for the type of operation we'd want to have. So BRT vehicles would come in, drop off, they'd go south on Division, they'd head back west to the Capitol. Whereas Route 1 vehicles, as they head east, they would come down Division and make a left turn to head east, and that signal already allows left turns and right turns. So that's kind of set up for that operation already. So that is certainly an opportunity associated with Idea 5. There are fewer signals, again, required in terms of modifications made to the east. And so ADA upgrades at 17 spots. There's 10 locations that we don't really need these enhanced features, just like with the other ideas. Again, the big thing is a transfer is required with this one. And again, having to work with the City of East Lansing here to deal with some of these right turn only lanes at near that parking deck to make sure that the buses have adequate adequate opportunity to make their turns. So that's a summary of the 5 ideas. Now, with this project, there's an infinite number of permutations that we could actually examine, whether the bus is operating in mixed traffic with passenger cars, if the bus has got dedicated side running lanes or dedicated median running lanes. We tried to look at a variety of different ideas, and the 5 that we've presented are the ones that that we wanted to show you. These are some other ideas that we looked at in terms of terminating the BRT at Bogue and having operate in mixed traffic all the way to the Meyer Mall. Other ones with operating the BRT to the Broad Station. So there's just a variety of different things that we've looked at, and the 5 that we've presented seem to be viable, I guess. So other considerations, we've heard you at the August meetings as it relates to, there were several comments about emergency access, particularly in the Meridian Township area where the option has a median running dedicated BRT lanes. And there was the thoughts, how do emergency vehicles access those areas where maybe they need to cross the median. So we had meetings with emergency responders, first responders in East Lansing, Meridian Township. We talked about the concept as it's currently shown with the median running BRT in Meridian Township. And there's things that we can do to allow emergency access, whether it would be putting mountable curbs in that median area to allow emergency responders to gain access to a site, or maybe gapping out some spots so that, and putting it at a level grade for first responders to access. We also talked about the idea, as alluded in all the ideas, the fact that when there are dedicated BRT lanes, those first responders can use those BRT lanes once they pick up somebody that needs to go to the hospital. They can use that BRT lane and actually improve their response time in getting somebody to the hospital. So that's actually a sort of a benefit of the BRT only lanes there. We wouldn't impact preemption along the route. There still would be signal preemption so that the first responders can make the signals change to what they need to in order to access the site quicker. And in Meridian Township, we talked about the fact that they actually have a specialized fire officer who would be required to examine where an incident occurs and what's the best way for them to get to the site. So it's not just a driver going out and trying to find his way. They would actually have a specialized fire officer looking into what is the most efficient way to get to the various sites along Meridian Township in anticipation of some sort of an incident that may occur. And as the project moves forward, we anticipate having more meetings, of course, with emergency responders as the project comes to a conclusion later. And another thing that we've heard from you as well is the fact that the station locations, as currently concepted at Meyer and at the Meridian Mall, are not necessarily right at the drop-off points, right at the front door. And so that's a problem for getting people into and out of those locations very easily. And that's a lobbying issue. We're certainly wanting to improve that situation. And so we're going to continue to advocate, with those private property owners, Meyer and the mall, to try to get those stations closer. And then just one last word on the ADA signal improvements. Again, there's locations in Meridian Township. This happens to be a visualization of the Montrose intersection. There's no signal here today. With the concept where they have median running BRT, we would put in a traffic signal at that location in order to get people into the median. So there would be audible signals, there would be specialized concrete here with tactile strips and stuff with visualization as well, colored concrete, to really enhance that location, enhance that visual cue on how to get to the median, so that people could either cross the road entirely or they could cross into the median to access the BRT station in the median. So just with a lot of these ideas, when we take away the BRT in the median, there's no need to put a traffic signal there anymore. So presumably with idea 1, for instance, these BRT stations would be on the outside instead of in the median, and then you would not need a signal at that location anymore.
Okay, just a couple more slides and we'll wrap up here. First of all, this is the access to stations meets industry standard. So what this graphic shows up on the screen is it shows the buffer zones that are around the route. So as you can see, this purple dashed line with the close spacing dash, the close spacing, it's a mouthful, close spaced dashes, how's that? Sorry about that. Is the quarter-mile buffer around the corridor. And then the purple line with the bigger space dashes, that is the half-mile buffer. The reason we want to point it out is it's for transit, it's industry standard to be within the half-mile buffer, which this proposed route is, and in fact, most of the stations are within quarter mile of each other. And then finally, this last slide that we want to show you is an idea that could apply to all the ideas. So that's why we didn't include it with any one specific. It's a Frandor concept. So one of the comments we heard in August was, what about Frandor? What about the access to Frandor? So we produced an idea that basically would still allow for access to Frandor. So what we would do is if you're traveling eastbound on Michigan Avenue, as you came to Clipper, you would turn left onto Clipper and head north in mixed traffic, and then you would turn right onto Vine Street in mixed traffic, and we would produce a transfer station at Frandor. And then the vehicle would proceed from the station to Morgan Lane and head south on Morgan Lane and head back to Michigan and head east. Conversely, we would also allow the westbound BRT buses to turn right on Morgan Lane and head north, and again, onto Vine Street, access the station, and then from there, take Vine to Clipper, and then back down to Michigan, and then head west towards the Capitol. So this was a concept or an idea that could be applied to any of the ideas. So we thought it was important, rather than to show it with one specific idea, to bring it separately to you to show that this is something that could be added to any of them. And several ideas are that way. You know, they're not necessarily mutually exclusive in that they can't work with other ideas. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over, and I think we'll get to question and answer sooner.
It's actually just about the ideas that were articulated. Can you give a price for the overall cost for number 5 that wasn't said out loud?
Sure. Let me go back here and just make sure I give you the right number.
Thank you.
Number 5 was $100 to $105 million. That was very similar to idea number 4. They were both the same cost range.
How about operating costs?
Again, similar to idea number 4, $2.3 to $2.6 million. It is less because it's a shorter route, so it's less than the current BRT. Real quick, I know we're going to get into questions, so if it's okay, I'm going to turn it back over, and then we'll get into the questions here.
Although you're going to answer all the questions. First of all, make sure you write your questions on the white comment cards, if you would, please. It'll be a lot easier if we can get all your questions. Josh is picking them up in the back. So we will take questions based on the cards that come in. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so your question, please.
What I wanted to say was, if I look at the number of people riding the bus at the bus stops, it seems to drop. The westbound rides seem to drop off at Harrison Avenue, and then they just get lower and lower until you get, when you're like from the mall to Harrison, they're pretty low. Then from Harrison on, they get a little bit higher. Now, going east, it looks like everybody wants to go to the mall, because you can tell that as you go from Harrison, it gets higher and higher, and people are going to the mall, and then you're picking up all these people and going back west, and the most people you pick up is at the mall.
So your question is?
Well, the reason I'm saying this is that, so my question is, why do we need, if we're trying to move people from the mall to downtown Lansing, why are we doing that when people want to go east to the mall and not west back toward Lansing?
So your question really is, why are the ridership numbers directing the design? Or what aspect of the ridership numbers are directing the design? Is that your question?
That's my question.
Okay, all right. Okay, did you get that?
Well, I think the intent of the BRT is to provide access to all those locations, both at the Capitol on the west end and all the way to Meridian Mall and Meyer on the east end. I'm not sure I can answer the question better than that. I mean, there's lots of, not necessarily everybody's going from the mall to the Capitol. There's some going from the mall to other places in between. People might be going from the Capitol to some other places in between as well, not necessarily from one end of the line to the other.
Are these 1 hour increments that they looked at? Like the ridership for each stop, is it 1 hour?
I'm not sure what data that you're looking at there.
It's just the ridership for each stop along the corridor. Is it per hour?
Just one last slide that we forgot to mention, just the next steps here. We're going to continue to gather your comments. We're going to continue to research and evaluate ideas. FTA is going to release the draft environmental assessment for the project coming up here for public view and comment. There will be a formal public hearing, so there will be an additional opportunity for even more comments that you may have. Ultimately, we'll determine the mitigations necessary and modify the environmental assessment as required based on the comments that we receive. And so I'm going to turn it over to you to facilitate the Q&A.